Did you know that by looking at your face, it's possible to predict in advance how successful you'll be, how much money you'll have, whether you'll be in relationships, and whether you'll have any respect in your life at all? At least that's exactly what they're trying to convince you of today. You are told that if you have the right facial features, everything will be fine. If you don't, you might as well not even try. That your entire life is basically already decided by your jawline, your eyes, and the angles of your skull. And the most upset part is that all of these isn't presented as someone else's opinion, but as supposedly objective reality, as scientific knowledge you are just supposed to accept. This is called Looksmaxxing. And today it's no longer something that exists only on fringe forums, it's mass content that people see in their feed every single day. But here's the question: what's actually hiding behind all these alpha male posturing, fake confidence, and talk about harsh reality? What are Looksmaxxers really hiding? Strength and confidence, or fear, deep insecurity, and sense of their own inadequacy?
I Looksmax purely from a logical standpoint. I know that looks are the most important metric. I maximize all metrics of my life, and it would be insane to not prioritize them.
If you listen to Looksmaxxing supporters, their arguments sound quite logical on first. They tell you that looks matter, that attractive people are perceived better, and that it's easier for them in dating and relationships. And if we're being honest, there's some truth to that. We live in a world where appearance really does influence a lot of things, especially first impressions. Pretending otherwise is just lying. That's why the basic idea of Looksmaxxing lands so easily, especially with young people. It feels honest, straightforward, and even liberating. Like, stop lying to yourself, this is reality. These are the rules of the game. Everything is clear and simple. But then the most dangerous part begins. Because Looksmaxxing doesn't treat appearance as one factor among many. It says appearance is everything. If you were born ugly, you have no chance of surviving in this reality. If you have problems in your life, then the problem is your face. If people don't choose you, it means you are simply not attractive enough. You need to change your haircut or get plastic surgery. If you lack confidence, it means you just don't meet the standards.
Plastic surgery, Looksmaxxing. Every one of your peers around you is going to surpass you, so you have to start now. Start blasting those steroids and stop asking what could happen if I hop on steroids.
This person is literally advising his audience to get plastic surgery and hop on steroids, presenting it as logical and most obvious next step. Most of his audience consists of young people, often with unstable self-esteem, who are already anxious and insecure about their appearance. For them, these words don't sound like one possible option of many. It sounds like a call to action, like confirmation of thought. If you are not ready to do this, it means you are just not trying hard enough. What's especially important here is that the side effects and serious consequences of such decisions are just completely ignored. Plastic surgery and steroids are presented as upgrade tools, not as serious medical interventions with long-term risks. And the price for that won't be paid in likes, it will be paid in health. I think it's obvious to any reasonable person that success is an extremely complex thing, made up of many different factors. But Looksmaxxing takes complicated life-related issues and simplifies them down to a single argument. Now you don't need to understand yourself. You don't need to work on communication. You don't need to analyze past experiences or make new attempts. Everything is reduced to the correctness of facial geometry. To make things convincing, Looksmaxxing actively uses pseudo-scientific language. Percentages, scales, ratings, golden ratios, angles, symmetry, names of bones and muscles. When you see numbers and charts, it creates a sense of objectivity. It feels like this isn't an opinion, but a scientific fact. But attraction has never worked like math. If everything were decided by formulas, the world would look completely different. We wouldn't see such a wide variety of people in relationships, marriages, and careers. The mere existence of real life already contradicts the idea that attraction can be precisely measured and predicted.
Number 3 is to practice relaxed eyebrows. This helps achieve what is known as hunter eyes, where your eyes look more relaxed, you look more fierce. Unlike prey eyes, where your eyebrows are up, you look kind of bring those eyebrows down and achieve a more fierce, more masculine look to your eyes. Follow for more tips.
So this guy seriously advises relaxing your eyebrows to create a so-called predator gaze. And the problem isn't even that this sounds just stupid. The problem is that behind it lies a very childish understanding of how human relationships actually work. You can train your gaze, posture, or facial expressions as much as you want, but you can't fool other people with these tricks for long. People aren't aren't idiots. They don't read eyebrow positions. They read your overall state. Confidence, tension, stiffness, insecurity. If inside you're tense, anxious, and insecure, it becomes obvious within 5 minutes of interaction. No matter what kind of gaze you practice in front of the mirror. Moreover, trying to look intimidating or predatory. In that state usually has the opposite effect. You end up looking even more unnatural and awkward. So these kinds of things are usually done not by confident people, but by teenagers who believe they can scare or outplay others through appearance alone. This is the level of schoolyard fantasies. In real life, normal people don't behave like this.
I started sleeping naked every single night because the benefits are life-changing. And don't worry, I'm not naked right now, but after this video, I'm about to be. There are studies and personal testimonies that state that sleeping naked actually helps you fall asleep quicker, regulate your body temperature, and increase the health of your reproductive organs, male and female.
One of the most dangerous aspects of Looksmaxxing is the way it affects the way people think. A person stops seeing themselves realistically. Every single detail becomes a potential problem that needs to be fixed. And what's important is that this process has no end. Even if someone improves something, the feeling of satisfaction never lasts long. The system is built in a way where there's always be a new flaw that you need to correct. Today it's the jawline, tomorrow it's eye tilt, the day after that is skull shape.
Why are you spending $100,000 on surgery to go from 6'2" to 6'6"?
That is more about just presence. You walk into a room, people notice, right? You're standing in the middle of a club, you're an outlier. People will come up to me, they'll say, oh, well, 6'2", that's already very tall. But in terms of percentiles, it's only 91st percentile. 6'6", we get to 99. I'm someone who wants to be the best, right? And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there.
This guy talks about wanting to surgically lengthen his legs to become even taller despite already being almost 2 meters tall. And the real question here isn't about the surgery itself. The real question is, what kind of mental state do you have to be in to even start seeing this as a problem? And the most important part, he's not alone. There are a lot of people like this, and that clearly shows that this has nothing to do with objective standards and with appearance itself. Because even if a 2-meter tall guy feels like it's not enough, there's no finish line here. It simply doesn't exist.
As a 6'6" man, I'm still wearing height inserts when I go to the bar, plus Air Maxes. So look at me facially, like I'm LTN. So the problem is that if I'm 6'6", and someone who's 6 foot tall now is 6'3", and they have a face card that's better than mine, they're actually going to have a higher SMV in my opinion. How do I counteract this? Well, I put inserts on my own. Oh, but dude, you're 6'6", man, don't do it. No, but you can do it. No, I'm going to do the same thing. So now we're both 6'9". We're both contributing to hypergamy. Now what?
At some point, a person who gets deep into these stops being mentally adequate. Any flaw, no matter how small, is perceived as critical. When you see people seriously discussing hitting their facial bones, painful and completely pointless methods, or attempt to change eye color or skull shape, it becomes obvious this is no longer about self-improvement. This is about self-hatred. No person who truly respects himself would physically harm their own body in the hope of becoming worthy of love and attention. And yet all of these manipulations with the body are presented as discipline and strength of will. Looksmaxxing rarely stays an internal struggle. Almost always it turns outward. People start evaluating not only themselves, but also others. Ratings appear, terms, labels, and a human being is no longer seen as a person. They are seen as a number. If you stay in this environment long enough, your thinking starts to change. A person begins constantly comparing themselves to others. Every interaction, every photo becomes a reason for analysis. You're no longer just looking at yourself, you're judging yourself. This leads to chronic tension. You're never good enough because the standard is always higher. Even when you improve something, the satisfaction doesn't last. Very quickly a new target appears, and instead of feeling growth, you only feel exhaustion. So this is especially destructive for young people whose personalities are still forming. Instead of developing skills, interests, and social connections, they get stuck in an endless loop of self-criticism. And the saddest part is that many of these people genuinely believe they're doing self-development, when in reality, they're just learning how to hate themselves in a more systematic and rationalized way.
Here's what you're gonna do, boys. Tape this to your delts so that you actually look like you have a little bit of size on you when you're like me and all you're doing is partying all the time and not lifting. Boom. You see that? Is that autistic?
Just think about this for a second. The guy is already on steroids. He already looks better than 99% of men. It's still not enough for him. He pulls out fake shoulder pads to look even wider. And for me, this is a 100% indicator that we're looking at an absolute loser. It doesn't matter how much muscle he has, what his achievements are. Inside, this is just deeply insecure boy who can't handle even a basic sense of himself. And here's a question: how is someone like this supposed to handle real problems in life if he can't even accept his own appearance? And no steroids, no surgeries, no pads are ever going to fix that.
3 ways to make your eyes look majestic as Number 1 is to use an eyelash curler. You ever notice how the guys in the boy bands have nice long eyelashes? Just curl your eyelashes, make them look longer, kind of sparkle and pop. Try it out.
And here, in my opinion, this is where we completely went off the rails. A guy seriously suggests curling your eyelashes so your gaze looks more expressive. This one video alone cuts testosterone in half, because this is absolutely not what men should be worrying about. And this is no longer about growth, strength and confidence. This is just about a complete loss of direction and a total misunderstanding of what you should actually be focusing on.
Will this face roller actually make your face look slimmer? I don't know, we gotta test it out. Let's start rolling. I'm gonna roll my neck too.
Looksmaxxing didn't appear out of nowhere. It landed in a very fertile environment. Many young men today feel lonely, socially isolated and confused. They are still expected to be confident, successful and strong, but at the same time they don't really understand how they are supposed to get there. The relatively recent concept of toxic masculinity has only added to the confusion about what it even means to be a man. Social media pushes contradictory standards. Women are said to want someone attractive but masculine, emotionally available but independent, strong but not controlling or abusive. Young and inexperienced guys get lost in this stream of conflicting messages. They simply don't have a clear working role model that shows them how to behave or what to strive for. And this is exactly where Looksmaxxing enters the picture. In contrast to all this complexity, it offers very clear goals and an extremely simplified view of the world.
How to properly Looksmaxx. The first thing you need to do is to analyze your face and compare your faces to faces of men that women find attractive. Look at yourself. Do women stare at you? Do women compliment you? How does your face compare with other guys who are attractive?
He says the problem isn't that the world is complicated and relationships are unpredictable. The problem is you and your appearance. And if you work on yourself hard enough, everything else will supposedly fall into place. The thing is that Looksmaxxing offers a sense of control in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. When relationships don't work out, when you feel invisible or unwanted, it's much easier to believe in a simple and rigid model than to accept uncertainty. It's almost like a technical task. Complete the steps and you'll get the reward.
3 exercises that you can do in order to strengthen the muscles in your face. This first exercise is all about slimming your face. What you're going to do is suck your cheeks in as much as possible, tilt your head all the way back and push your chin forward. Hold for 5 seconds. Complete 10 to 15 reps.
The problem is that human relationships don't work this way. There's no formula that guarantees love, respect or acceptance. But instead of acknowledging this, Looksmaxxing offers an alternative. It replaces complex reality with a simplified system where everything can be explained through genetics and external parameters. And this is where the real danger appears. When a person believes that everything is decided by appearance, they start interpreting any rejection as proof of their own defectiveness, not as incompatibility. This destroys self-esteem far more deeply than honestly admitting that life is complicated and often unfair.
54. So finally I bought derma roller to use on my cooked hairline. Took it और मैंने थोड़ा सा pressure apply करके अपने right as well as left hairline में इसको use किया. Then I used zygo pushing to get opposite cheekbones. Then moved on to orbicularis oculi जिससे कि हमारा upper eyelid exposure कम हो सके. Then moved on to MPR for jaw gains and finalized our routine with thumb pulling.
In the next video, a guy is literally pressing his fingers into his skull, hoping to somehow change the shape of his bones and make his face more attractive. And honestly, there isn't much to even discuss here. It's obvious that this kind of content doesn't turn people into idiots. It's designed for people who already are. You have to be in a very specific mental state to see seriously believe that you can change the shape of your skull with your fingers. I don't even know what number of IQ you need to have to believe in that. And this is probably the most disturbing part, because these videos don't just exist, people watch them, people take them seriously, and people genuinely believe this makes sense. One of the most persistent myths of Looksmaxxing is the idea of objective beauty. People are constantly shown charts, rankings, and scales that supposedly allow you to accurately determine who is attractive and who is not. But if you dig just a little deeper, it becomes obvious that under the label of objectivity, what's being sold is a very narrow and limited perspective. Most of these standards reflects a very specific internet culture. They completely ignore charisma, behavior, humor, or intelligence, all the things that play a huge role in real life. On top of that, beauty standards are constantly changing. What was considered attractive 10 years ago can be seen very differently today. Most likely in a few years, many of these criteria will seem strange and even ridiculous. Looksmaxxing ignores this and presents current trends as something timeless. And that's the main trap. It pushes people to chase a goal that is not only unattainable, but also constantly shifting. I don't know what's wrong with this guy or how he managed to do this with his face. It clearly doesn't look attractive, it looks disturbing. He genuinely looks like a victim of a nuclear disaster, not some TikTok ideal. But he's probably thinking that he's some super cool lion or alpha male and believes that everyone should be fainting just from looking at his jaw.
A lot of you have been asking for a thumb pulling tutorial. Here is a full guide on thumb pulling to achieve more forward growth like I did. I want you to put your body against a wall and put your chin to your neck. Next, I want you to put your thumbs on your palate. Push up and out with your thumbs and resist with tucking your chin.
Looksmaxxing almost never talks about what happens after. What happens if you actually become more attractive? Do relationships automatically become deeper? Does loneliness disappear? Does anxiety go away? The reality is that looks might open the door, but they don't keep you inside the room. In the long run, completely different things matter. Character, emotional maturity, communication skills, and the ability to be an interesting person. Looksmaxxing rarely talks about this because it's more complicated and you can't fit it into checklists. As a result, people invest a massive amount of energy into something that gives very limited returns, while ignoring the things that could actually change their lives.
Make fun of my nose, they call me ugly, they say I have no friends. What'd they do to you at lunch? People that are different don't need to be criticized.
There are people who genuinely have serious appearance-related problems, not imaginated or exaggerated, real ones, caused by genetics, injuries, medical conditions. Things like that can genuinely interfere with living, socializing, and building relationships. And logically, it might seem like Looksmaxxing was created exactly for these people, that the original idea was supposed to help people like this, to offer support, solutions, or at least some way to improve quality of life. But in practice, the opposite happens. These same Looksmaxxers are often the first to attack those guys. They mock them, call them losers, even though these are exactly the people who need support the most. At some point, you start clearly seeing the difference. One case is a person who genuinely struggling and needs help, and a completely different case is insecure losers from TikTok who look normal yet still hate themselves and hide behind fantasies about alphas and jawlines. It's important to say that wanting to look better is normal. Taking care of yourself is normal. The problem begins when appearance becomes the only source of self-worth and meaning. When a person stops seeing themselves as a whole and starts seeing themselves as a collection of parameters that need fixing. Looksmaxxing sells the idea of strength, but in reality it feeds on fear. Fear of rejection, of being invisible, and being not enough. And as long as that fear goes unrecognized, no amount of optimizing your appearance will ever bring peace. Real growth is always more difficult and far less spectacular. It doesn't fit into short videos and it doesn't look impressive on screen. And maybe the most important question to ask yourself: why do I believe that my value is determined only by my appearance?